My name is Jan Brown. I'm a woman in long-term recovery, and for me that means I haven't used drugs or alcohol for the past 34 years. I'm a peer recovery specialist and the executive director of SpiritWorks Foundation. Today I'm going to be having a conversation with Michael, who works for the Department of Social Services in a very unique and special role.
My name is Michael Scott. I'm a parent support specialist for the Department of Family Services in Fairfax County.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
So tell me a little bit about your role and what that entails.
So I'm the only peer recovery specialist in the Department of Family Services in Fairfax County. And it's a new role. It's a pilot program. It was really spearheaded with the recognition that there were parents who were losing their children into the system because of their own substance use, and that there needed to be something that was done about that. So they did some research. There's a program called the START program out of Kentucky, and we're trying to kind of model things after that. But the idea was to bring in a peer that would very early on introduce themselves to the parent that has the substance use issue and try to help them navigate their way to recovery.
Awesome. So talk a little bit about why peer versus paraprofessional or a professional in that role. What makes it a role for a peer?
I would say the primary reason is a real distrust for the system. when a CPS worker shows up on your door and starts asking questions, you're immediately on the defensive. And one of the beauties of working with a peer is, especially after we kind of share, I share my recovery story. I'm in recovery. I've been in recovery for 7 years now. There are things that I did that worked for me. Let's discover those things that work for you. Mm-hmm. And another part of my journey has been recognizing that my way is not everybody's way, and the beauty of seeing other people figure out what works for them. The primary purposes I feel I have is to provide hope. Because I remember what it was like to those first days of trying to get sober, trying to find my way in recovery. And I remember thinking it was impossible. I remember people telling me they had 30 days sober, and I was thinking, you're lying, that nobody can do that. Nobody that has lived what I've lived could get there, can do that. But they did. And if it weren't having people like that who shared their hope, shared their path, not necessarily coercing me into their path, but just showing me that there is a path exists.
So talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you've experienced being that first peer and being a peer in a heavy clinical role.
My previous experience was clinical, and so there's me having to make adjustments. But there's also the fact that I'm new to child welfare work, mm-hmm. which is very specific. And it's taken quite a while for me to kind of understand how that all works. And so one of the big challenges is the time frames when children are removed and how the court dates are worked out. It's a short period of time.
Yeah, from my understanding, they have a year.
That's right.
Yes.
And a year, when you're dealing with recovery, a year is not a long time.
Sure.
I mean, we're dealing with trying to help somebody find the motivation to change, to find the motivation to want recovery in the first place, maybe, depending on where they come in. Some are very ready right then and there. But regardless, the court is going to want to see a demonstration of recovery, of sobriety. They're going to want to see that over a period of time. And another challenge is not everybody defines recovery the same way. Back in the day, it was abstinence, pure abstinence. And now we're living in a time when there's medications available, medication-assisted treatment. And I get the impression that the court's kind of trying to figure out what to do with that. Is that okay?
So what does a day in the life of Michael look like? What kinds of things are you doing with those that you are providing support to?
Well, so there's the work that I do sort of face-to-face with individuals, or screen to screen, in these days, but just meeting them where they're at, finding out what the challenges are. Sometimes their challenges aren't just the substance, but it's base level need stuff, like roof over my head, food, Maslow's hierarchy, where are you at with that? What can we do to help with that? And then just exploring recovery, talking about what's worked, what hasn't worked, what do they want out of life? So often what clients in that environment had been doing was kind of living day to day, crisis to crisis. And so if we can get them out of that crisis to crisis and look at some long-term goals, things to look forward to, and it also sometimes shows the discrepancy in what they're doing versus where they want to be.
Sure.
And so if we can do a little bit of that and then say, hey, where do you want to be? How do you think you get there? What do you want your life to look like? Let's work together to figure out what that could be. And do substances play a role in that?
Sure.
Because some people don't want to give it up.
And would you say that most people's primary goal is to reunite with their children?
In the position that I'm in, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
That's a stated primary goal. Absolutely. Sure. The Department of Family Services is very child focused. So they want safety and security for that child. And they understand that the best way to provide that is through the parents. But the best way for the parents to provide that safety and security is for them to be sober or in some form of recovery.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's why I'm there, is to help them to be in some form of recovery so that they can be the parents that their children need them to be. You asked what I do, my day-to-day is, but a lot of times my day-to-day is actually educating social workers on what my role is, because sometimes they think I'm going to be kind of like their little informant. I'm going to provide them the information that the participant wouldn't otherwise provide, and we've had to be upfront about, like, look, someone's not going to share what needs to be shared with me if they think that I'm just going to turn around and tell you everything. And so we need you to agree that I'm not going to share everything with you.
So that's
and be okay with that.
A pretty significant level of trust on your part, on both sides,
on,
right?
On all
with
sides,
the client as well as with your colleagues and other staff.
There's the mandated reporter stuff, and I'm very open with my participants and my peer about that. But by and large, they can share with me, and with the confidence that I'm not there to share our conversations with everybody. But there's sort of the education looks something like this. Look, you know that the best person to care for this child is the parent, right? And we both know that the best that a parent will do best, sober or is seeking recovery. Let me do that. Let me do my job. Trust that I'm trying to get there, and trust you're going to do all the things you have to do anyways. You're going to be ordering the screenings and doing drop-ins on their house, and whatever that looks like, you're going to have to do that anyways. So just let me kind of have my piece, and everyone's been great about it. The benefits of bringing a peer into your organization are going to be several-fold. One, you're going to have somebody who can provide staff with that hope that I was talking about earlier. Provide them with a concrete example that recovery is real. There's someone who can. I mean, oftentimes in my role, I'm just explaining things that someone who's never used substances or had struggle with substances can understand. And there was even maybe a time in my life where I looked down on somebody who couldn't get it together. Who couldn't just by force of will make themselves stop. No one takes the time to really sit down and say, this is why this is happening. This is the timeline. This is what needs to happen, and then it's up to you whether
So very much a role model.
Role modeling
for both sides, if you.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Very good. What's next for you in terms of your role as a peer? Is this kind of the end? What does advancement look like for a peer?
I know that we want to grow the program, so we want to have more than one peer. Certainly peers that don't all look like me, and so we want to have more peers. We want to make it bigger, and the more relatable you are, I think sometimes that bridge becomes shorter. I have to recognize that there's sometimes the fact that I'm a white male is going to be an issue, or is going to make that bridge or that distance a little further, or maybe a lot further, depending. If we're going to grow this within the Department of Family Services in Fairfax, it's going to probably need to look like what the world looks like out there,
Sure.
as opposed to just me. In terms of advancement, I know there is a big push within the peer world to have peer supervisors. I think as there are more and more peers, there's going to be a need to supervise those peers. Mm-hmm. And the question, I think that's being discussed within the community is, does it need to be clinical staff, or can a peer do that?
That's right.
It's getting worked out. It's kind of exciting times to be part of that. So we're figuring it all out.
Absolutely. So thank you for being with me today and for sharing your story. It will make a difference for many folks. The role model piece of you being the role model for folks that you're serving, as well as being the role model and letting those that are your colleagues know that recovery can and is real and can happen for folks. So I appreciate it.
You're very welcome, and I appreciate being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.